Elias, praying on Mount Carmel for the cessation of that long drought which, for 3 years, parched the earth and dried up every spring, discovers the promised virgin under the form of a transparent cloud, arising from the bosom of the waters, to announce the return of rain. The acclamations of the people salute this propitious omen, and the prophet, who penetrates divine things, builds a chapel to the future Queen of Heaven.
Note: when rain falls in Palestine, there is a general rejoicing amongst the people. They assemble in the streets, sing, caper, and cry aloud, "O God! O blessed!" The chapel built by Elias on Mount Carmel was dedicated by him to the virgin who was to bring forth Virgini Paraturoi. This chapel was called Semencium, which means a place consecrated to an imperiare, empress, which can only refer to Mary, Empress of heaven and earth.
Isaiah declares to the house of David, whose chief, Achab, trembles beneath the threats of the stranger like a forest beaten by the tempest, that God shall give it an encouraging sign, with regard to the future of Judea, a future long and glorious still. A virgin shall conceive.
Note: this grand prophecy of Isaiah has been the object of a long and sharp controversy between the Jews and the Christians. The rabbins, who have commented on the text since the time of Christ, wishing to pervert the proofs which condemn them, and to mystify the words of the prophet, have pretended that the word Halma, which is found in the Hebrew text, signifies a simple young woman, although the Septuagint has rendered it by virgin. The fathers have triumphantly refuted this objection. The interpreters of the Septuagint, says St. John Chrysostom, are the most deserving of credit. They made their version more than a century before Jesus Christ. They were many in number. The time in which they wrote, their number and their union, render them much more worthy of belief than the Jews of our days, who have maliciously corrupted many passages of the sacred scriptures. Saint Jerome, the most profound Hebrew scholar of all the interpreters and commentators, asserts without fear, he says, of being contradicted by the Jews, that Halma, everywhere that the word occurs in the sacred scriptures, signifies simply a virgin in all her purity, and never a married woman. Luther, who made such lamentable use of much real learning, exclaims, with characteristic petulance and impatience, "If there be Jew or Hebrew scholar, who can show me the place where Halma means a woman, and not a virgin, he shall be entitled to 100 florins from me, that is, providing that I have them." Muhammad himself has testified to the virginity of the Mother of God, and Mary, daughter of Imran, who has preserved her virginity, and we have sent into her our Spirit, and she has believed in the words of the Lord and in his scriptures.
She shall bring forth a son, whose name shall be Emmanuel, or God with us. That child, miraculously given to the earth, shall be a scion from the stock of Jesse, a flower springing from his root.
Note: Jesse, called also Isai, was son of Obed and father of David. His memory is in high veneration amongst the Hebrews, who regard him as a perfectly just man.
He shall be called God the Mighty, the Father of the world to come, the Prince of Peace. He shall be raised as a standard before the world. All nations shall pray unto him, and his sepulchre shall be glorious. The mystery of the Messiah is clearly foreshown to the prophets. Some see Bethlehem made illustrious by his birth. Others predict his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, and indicate the peaceful and unpretending style thereof. They see him enter into his temple, that sacred pontiff according to the order of Melchizedek. They know the number of the pieces of silver, which the persecuting rulers of the synagogue shall drop into the hands of the wretch who is to sell his master.
Note: this passage, wherein God himself declares the number of silver pieces given in that infamous bargain, is impressed with a bitter and a dreadful irony. And the Lord said to me, "Cast it to the statuary, a handsome price, that I was priced at by them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver, etc."
They see the ignominious execution, the draught of vinegar and gall, offered in insolent mockery, during the agony of a god, and the garment, woven by the hands of a mother, disposed of by lot amongst the rude soldiers. They hear the sound of the nails which rend the bleeding hand, and sink with a dry, crackling sound into the accursed wood. And then the scene changes, like those paintings of Raphael, where the subject, begun on earth, extends itself beyond the clouds. The man of sorrows, the humble Messiah, whom even his own kindred despised, whom his people have not known, looks down in triumph from the highest heavens on his prostrate enemies. And the nations of the earth are all at length mindful of their God. Forgotten for so many ages, the nations rally round the standard of the cross, and the empire of Christ shall have no bounds but those of the universe. Nothing is wanting to complete the prophecies. Jacob pointed out the coming of Shiloh at the precise moment when the Jews shall cease to be governed by their own laws, which involves, of course, the ruin of a state. Balaam adds that destruction shall be effected by a people from Italy, and the satrap Daniel counts exactly the weeks which are to elapse before the appointed time. Everything that happens in this world has its preceding sign, said a man of genius, who is now lonely and dreaded under his tent. When the sun is about to rise, the horizon is colored with 1,000 hues, and the east appears all on fire. When the tempest is coming, there is heard on the shore a rumbling noise, and the waves are agitated, as it were, of themselves. The figures of the Old Testament, according to the fathers of the Church, are the signs which announce the rising of the Sun of Justice and of the Star of the Sea. To Christ, the Son of God, belongs strength and power. To Mary, grace and pitying kindness. She is the tree of life, planted in the abodes of men, by the hands of God himself, and the pledge of happiness far beyond that which our first parents enjoyed in Eden. The dove from the ark, bearing to earth the olive branch, the sealed fountain, whose waters have never been troubled with aught of impurity. The fleece which receives the dew of heaven, finally, the delicate and odoriferous rosebush, through which Moses perceived the divinity, a bush which, very far from being consumed by the fire, which destroys all things else, was in some sort preserved thereby, and lost, in its contact with the celestial flame, neither a leaf nor a flower.
Note: Philo, who has made this remark, and who discovers in this burning bush a mysterious allegory, falsely applies it to the Jewish nation by a forced conjunction. Josephus, who also tried to penetrate this mystery, has succeeded no better. Those wild roses, emblematical of modest maidens, who shed their sweet perfume in solitude, and who are made resplendent by contact with the deity, without having their spotless, white and delicate blush anywise tainted thereby. These are the most striking image of Mary, that mystical rose of the new law.
Like that enchanting figure, which an ancient painter composed, by borrowing 1,000 detached beauties from the loveliest women of Greece, so the chaste spouse of the Holy Ghost united, in her own person, all that had been most admirable in the celebrated women of the old law. Fair as Rachel and Sarah, she united to the prudence of Abigail the heroic courage of Esther. Susanna, chaste as the flower whose name she bears.
Note: the name Susanna signifies lily.
Judith, whose crown of lilies was sprinkled with the blood of Holofernes.
Note: the ancients attribute to the lily the power of nullifying enchantments and warding off danger. Judith encircled her brows, say the rabbins, with a garland of lilies, so as to make her way without fear into the tent of Holofernes.
Axa, whose hand was the ransom of a conquered city, and that mother, so illustrious in her misfortunes, who beheld all her sons die for the law, these were but faint images of her, who was to unite within herself all the perfections of the woman and the angel. After an expectation of 4,000 years, the time marked out by so many prophecies at length arrives. The shadows of the ancient law disappear, and Mary arises on the horizon of Judea, like the star, which heralds the approach of day.